Love it or hate it, it's undeniable that The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, feels different. It's impossible to watch this movie without thinking of the massive shadow cast by the countless other live-action and animated iterations of this character, some of which have had overwhelming cultural and critical acclaim. And yet, this movie still manages to etch out a unique cinematic space for itself. How does it do that? As a quick aside, I think there's a serious problem with the way we talk about movies. Film analysis is riddled with cliché descriptions of plot holes, good performance, and pretty cinematography. These low-hanging fruit might represent real elements of film, but their vagueness doesn't get us any closer to understanding and connecting with the films they're evaluating. So with that harsh condemnation ringing in our ears, I will now tell you that I think the secret to The Batman is its tone. But what am I really saying? What is tone? What is the Batman's tone? And how is that communicated to us through the craft of filmmaking? It's really tricky to clearly define what tone is in a film and differentiate it from style. It's probably impossible to completely disconnect the two. A cursory browsing of the internet and popular academic sources turn up a variety of opinions. For my purposes, I'm going to call tone the overall feeling of a film, while style is the aesthetic choices of the artist. Style refers to bigger, more replicable things like camera movements, the pacing of edits, production design, etc. And tone, while obviously being influenced by the stylistic choices, exists independently. To better understand this distinction, I want to contrast La La Land and Babylon. These films are both directed by Damien Chazelle, with a predominantly consistent crew including the director of photography, the editor, and the composer. Both films consist of young people trying to make it in Hollywood and dealing with the costs and repercussions of those dreams. They both heavily feature jazz music, they're both shot on 35mm film with anamorphic lenses. The list of thematic and stylistic similarities goes on and on. And yet, the tone of these two films is so different. The world inhabited in La La Land is happy and hopeful. Even though they encounter setbacks, they still move forward, and in the end, despite having to pay a cost for those dreams, they all got what they wanted. In Babylon, despite the hope that the characters still feel, it's tainted with a grimness and a sense of impending doom. So, where does the difference in tone come from? Obviously, a level of it comes from the writing. Without spoiling too much, the outcome of different characters in Babylon is definitely less happy than La La Land. But I think it's deeper than that because the tone is different from the get-go. This may sound like a cop-out answer, but I think the difference comes in the smaller, less definable choices. For example, both films feature a large party scene in the beginning, but the scene in La La Land is much more focused. The audio is more discernible versus the chaotic sounds of the party in Babylon. This is less of a consistent stylistic choice and more of a feeling. I think that tone is the cadence and speed that an actor speaks, or the general exposure levels of a movie, or the props that the art director put on the wall of a set. Tone is the small choices that come day to day while shooting a film that, altogether, make for a unique cinematic experience. So going back to The Batman, what is its tone? There's no right answer to this question. It's pretty subjective to our individual viewing experience. For me, when I watched this film for the first time, I felt a grounded, gritty vibe. I felt that, more than even Christopher Nolan's Batman, I was watching a real person in an extraordinary scenario. Less like I was watching an action movie and more like I was watching an actual detective story. I think this is particularly impressive considering that it's obviously a fantastical world and some things are pretty absurd. So how did they make me feel this way despite the setting? I think it's the subjectivity that this film has that really sets it apart. This subjectivity can be seen in things as simple as the name itself. It may seem like they're just trying not to overlap with previous films, but I think the name, The Batman, is really good. All the side characters have always referred to him as The Batman. So by calling the movie that, we're in the more subjective experience of what it would be like to have a real person in the world dress up like a bat. We get the subjective experience of Bruce Wayne taking off the cowl and having eyeliner on. It might be silly, but it really bugged me in previous Batman films when they would obviously have makeup, but then it would disappear. Some filmmakers might have thought this would be a distraction, but watching it now, suddenly I'm thinking of this character more as a real person. Similar to that is the way we would see him moving around in regular street clothes. Some superhero movies have tried to address this issue, but most recent Batman movies have Bruce Wayne suddenly showing up in the suit when the plot needed Batman. Seeing the character have to improvise and move more naturally grounded him a lot. The next thing I noticed is just how he moves. The first time we see his character, he walks into the scene. This gives us so much information about who and what he is. Contrast this to other Batmans that would show up sometimes magically into a scene. In this film, he's a skilled but still regular person. The obstacles feel more real when we can't just cut away and he's suddenly somewhere else. Another example of this was when he escaped the police station. As he's about to jump off the building, he hesitates. This quick moment really grounds what's happening and how terrifying it would be. There are probably 100 other similar small choices that also contribute that I just didn't notice. What makes this so fun is that you don't have to notice the first time through, but you feel it. The Batman isn't a perfect movie by any stretch. I personally think that the last 30 minutes totally undermine the rest of the film. But all that aside, this film undoubtedly does a really good job of setting a clear and interesting tone. Acknowledging and appreciating this is really important, because the more you think about this, the more you'll realize that this is a distinguishing feature of really good films, and the element most missing in lazy, sterile, big-budget films. Hopefully, if we encourage and reward this kind of filmmaking, we'll get more interesting and unique films like The Batman. Thanks so much for watching this video. When I was making it, I had a lot of debates and research and kind of going back and forth about really what the difference is between tone and style. And in the end, I had to go with something that felt real and kind of authentic to me. But if you disagree with that, or if you have your own thoughts, make sure to make a comment down below and we can talk about that more. Please like and subscribe. That really helps get this video out to more people, and I really appreciate that. I'll see you in the next video.